Okay, our dodge and burn stage is completed. Now we are going to focus on final adjustments of the luminosity levels in the image. As I've mentioned before, this image has already quite dynamic range. Let's move over and have a look at our histogram. As you should know by now, the left-hand side of the histogram represents shadows and blacks in the image. The left edge represents blacks. Then moving towards the middle of the histogram, we have midtones. So the middle part of the graph represents midtones in this image, which will be shown here in the background in the midtones of the skin. The right hand side of the graph represents highlights and bright areas. So this peak of information will be related to the highlights in the skin. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make the image a little bit brighter. However, I don't want to make the shadows brighter. I want to maintain this quite dynamic and strong contrast. So I'm going to do this by adding new curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to limit the adjustments only to the midtones and to the highlights area, leaving the shadows untouched. So that way I won't be affecting the left hand side of the histogram at all, which already looks good. I'm just going to make the highlights a little bit stronger. To do this, let's move over to the layers panel and let's add another adjustment layer, curves. I'm just going to make this a little bit shorter so you can clearly see. So let's select curves adjustment layer and let's just rename it. Let's call it luminosity. And I'm just going to group this layer with itself to keep things tidy and organized. So having the luminosity adjustment layer selected, simply hit Command G on your keyboard, and that way this layer will be hidden inside the folder. I'm just going to rename this folder luminosity as well. So let's get access to our adjustment layer. Let's open the folder and let's select the adjustment layer. As I mentioned before, I would like to make the highlights a little bit brighter, so I'm just going to add control point to this line and push it slightly upwards. However, I have to check if I'm not damaging the texture of the skin, and I want to add another control point in the shadow area to block this adjustment from the shadows. I don't want to affect shadows at all. So let's switch off and on. Let's zoom in and let's check if we are maintaining the skin texture. I don't want to blow out highlights. So let's maybe move this point a little bit downwards, and I guess this position will be fine. So let's zoom out and let's quickly switch off and on this adjustment layer so we can see that very quickly in a few seconds we have made the image brighter, and by creating this control point and by positioning it in the shadow area, we are blocking this adjustment from affecting the shadows in the image. So let's again switch it off and on. So that way in this clip very quickly we have adjusted luminosity levels. Let's move over to the next video where we will perform sharpening, and starting on from the next clip we will be working on color. So see you in the next clip.